After about 4 hours, I finally cherried Ninpek. That's the third game on UFO 50 if you go by chronological order. I have been playing them one game at a time each week, so we've already done Bug Hunter and Barbuda, and this game, pretty good. This is definitely the first time where I was honest when I said I don't think the next game will actually be able to hold up to the hype of the ones before it. Loved Barbuda. Bug Hunter I thought was even better. This one is still pretty good though, even though it's not nearly as great as those in my opinion. And that's just because the scale and scope of this game is so much smaller, right? This is not trying to be something really strategic or wild. This is definitely something more grounded. And in fact, I have to give it a lot of credit here. The side scroll action that happens in this game really does scroll. There's a constant push that's being happened as you are moving as your little ninja character. That's something that's so old and so antiquated that it actually kind of loops around to feeling fresh again. It's really unique. Off the top of my head, I'm having a hard time thinking of other games that are like that other than maybe the occasional Mario level that has a force scroll. Maybe like, I don't know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde on the NES or something. This is definitely a genre that just isn't touched upon nearly the same way. As far as the plot action goes, you and your ninja friend are enjoying burgers as, you know, Japanese ninjas do. But an octopus comes with his tentacles, swoops it away, and you are on a mission. In fact, you're going to the end of the world according to the lore description on Ninpek, and it certainly feels like it, right? There's essentially one big giant level. There are partitions, and I started to think of them based off when the sprite colors change, which by the way, really great authentic touch to have the slightly different sprite color changes. But there's also little bonus parts where there's cherries to collect. If you get enough cherries, turns into onigiri or jelly donuts. And then finally, I guess like steamed tea or coffee, something like that. Those are fun little spots to get a lot of points. There might be a lot of Donkey Kong Country when you enter those bonus areas, and it's just filled with bananas and you're trying to get as many as you can before time is up. And I will say the points that you get in these modes and points in general, they really do have a purpose other than just getting a high score. I couldn't quite figure out the exact thresholds because the game was so fast and frenetic. And I will say too, points really matter in this game. This is not something that's just all about getting the high score, although that is a fun and cool thing you can do as well. But at the end of the day, you are definitely trying to beat the game as fast as possible. Now, points really do matter. So in these bonus modes, it's not like you're just sitting around waiting for the next spot. You are trying to get one up so that you can just live. The game is really hard, it's really fast paced, and by reaching certain point thresholds, you can unlock one-up balloons that come on the screen. You don't just get one right away, you gotta earn it, though truthfully, I've never really had a hard time actually hitting any of these one-up balloons. And in fact, as you progress further through the one singular but long level that you're playing on, you can also get other one-up balloons as well. Again, the game is tough, right? This is probably the hardest 1 minute of adjusting to a game I've played so far on UFO 50. You know, instantly you are just thrown right into the scenario with a whole variety of really creative enemies. You've got cows, you've got purple people eaters, bamboo dragons, you've got cows with sunglasses who are flying around. You got the little red guy from the main title screen of UFO 50. I'm thinking that maybe the recovery team chose that as their mascot because it's really interesting that it's in this. I kind of wonder if we'll see the little red guy in other levels. And in fact, this is the first game that really made me think more about the lore of UFO 50 as a game itself, right? So normally when you boot up UFO 50, you're just kind of mashing the button to start through the games and be able to pick the ones you want. But there's actually this little splash landing screen with this, you know, lo-fi sci-fi music, really cool, that talks a bit about the preservation that went behind this. It's a story told mostly through credits and through these really cool sprite portraits that go down. But yeah, because of the lore description in this game talking about the LX being the system, that's what made me think a little bit more about what this is. In fact, the lore description also reveals that this is the first side-scrolling implementation on the LX. I'm looking forward to playing new iterations of this. It's definitely a simple game, Ninpek, right? There's a lot of room for expansion. If you stop to think about it, there's really only one power-up to get, which is just faster shurikens. It's not like it's extremely better. It's certainly better, but not extremely better. And the game's pretty generous with giving you this power-up even after you die. There's also only one real boss fight as well. It's at the end of the game, and it's not extremely hard. It's definitely something that you can beat after maybe 1 or 2 tries. I think that Ninpek at the end of the day is very grounded, right? This is, again, not a game that's trying to be super ambitious or super crazy in its scope. It's just a fun run and gun game, and to its credit too, you feel really acrobatic. I love the double jump, the fluidity as you're moving, and even just the action itself. There's really a lot to be said about the game feeling crisp, which is something you might not expect on an 8-bit inspired game. Another thing that I really liked about the game, and this is kind of hidden, This took me a long time to figure out, and I freaked out when I figured it out. When you respawn after dying, you turn into a ghost, and you have some flexibility in terms of where you land and drop back into the gameplay, which, by the way, great mechanic in itself. I think that's a lot better than just like spawning in one arbitrary spot. And it's really clever of the game developers too, because due to the game constantly scrolling, it would probably be really hard to just pick a static spot to go back in. In fact, I could imagine the frustration of like a static spot and just dying right away, because you don't have the invincibility frames that you might get in other games. Right when you land in, you can die right away if you spawn in a really bad spot or if you wait too long to launch. But anyway, that's not the thing that's really cool, although that is really cool. The thing that's really cool is you can actually shoot while you're a ghost. That's part of why the final boss is not nearly as hard. You can just get a lot of free pot shots on the eyeball. You don't have to wait for the tentacle to drop all the way to the lowest spot to get the easy hits. You can just spam your, I guess, ninja ghost beams at the eyeball, which is really fun and cool. Once you do beat the game, you instantly go into a harder mode. It's a second loop that goes down. This made me die when I first got it, right? Because my first thought that the cherry run was going to be points based. So I really spent a lot of time optimizing the point routes, optimizing, being able to get your kills, which again, this is something worth noting because points are so important. You don't just get points for killing an enemy. They leave a little ghost shell behind, and more points and more different colors are based off how difficult the enemy that you killed was. You have to pick it up yourself. So again, it's not enough to just kill these things. You have to actually run around and pick it. And another fun thing that makes Ninpek pretty enjoyable to replay over and over again is these burger spots. Obviously, the story of the game is all about the ninja getting his burger back. Again, that's so 80s, right? That's so unbelievably 80s. We have to take a second to talk about the description of Ninpek right here, which is, it's ninja time, run and jump to reach the end of the world. Again, extremely 80s. You just absolutely love to see it. The burgers are actually something you can find throughout the levels too, and these are triggered based on invisible tiles. It's not Barbuda where you might see like a visual cue, although actually Barbuda has a lot of invisible cues itself. But anyway, as you're progressing through the levels and sort of making your way through things, you're encouraged to explore and reach different platforms because you might inadvertently trigger a burger spot. 500 points, nothing to snuff at, especially when you're trying to get those 1-ups. And in fact, the game itself will track how many, they call them sandwiches, how many sandwiches you eat. I got 12 in one run, so that's pretty good. I wonder how many there are, because frankly, this game is cool in that you don't necessarily want to get way too ambitious and crazy when you die. There is such a thing as trying to get a good run, trying to make it to the end if it's your first time playing, or trying to get that gold disc on it. You might not want to go super crazy. So there's a balance there, right? If you're really flexible and you're down to die and experiment, you could probably find every burger run. If you're just trying to optimize your early game, get a good amount of points so that you have enough lives to sort of make it through the end, that's another way to play too. Anyway, once you do beat the game, you get a second loop, right? Which, so arcade style, Ghosts and Goblins, you love to see it. And the game, to its credit, does change right off the bat, even though you'll notice very familiar backdrops, and it's mostly the same in terms of that. Almost every enemy has changed in some way. You got these little purple flying fish that dive bomb at you right off the bat, although the game is also really generous in just like feeding you a whole bunch of 1-up balloons for your trouble, which I thought was really nice. The worst enemy by far on the second loop are the freaking mushrooms. These were just static and really easy to deal with on the first run. They turn into these fairies that fly around, and the pollen that they drop on you stays for a pretty decent amount of time, really obnoxious. But thank goodness that the developers thought to put that enemy on the second loop and not on the first one. But yeah, for the most part, the game is pretty much the same on that second loop. You might have a lot more lives. It's still pretty tricky and cool. And then that's it. There's no third loop. There's no nothing. After the second loop, you're done. And I had to think about this a bit, because at first I was like, oh, like, is that, it'd be fun to keep playing infinitely. But actually, the more that I stopped to ponder it, I think it's cool that it does end on the second spot, because it means that your high score actually is really relevant, right? You're not comparing your high score to some savant who has looped Ninpek 99 times and has reached the maximum score. No, there's actually like a very finite amount of points that you can get in Ninpek, which does add a lot of replayability. I ended up with, I believe, 35,400 points, which I'm pretty proud of. If you in the comments can beat that and take a screenshot of beating it, I might give you a little prize or something, because I'm pretty proud of that score. For what it's worth, this is a pretty fun game in terms of actually optimizing itself, right? So even though the game is overall very simple, it's super fluid. I love that this old antiquated side-scrolling style feels more fresh again. There's something really charming about something like this, and I love that this type of game, Ninpek, could only really exist in UFO 50, right? This is not a game that you would really purchase alone. Bug Hunter, maybe you would, maybe, but this is not one that would really be worth your time and money unless it's like $1. So I love that you can get these types of genres in UFO 50 that are, you know, more limited in scope, but also really deep in terms of your replay value and whatnot. In fact, there's actually a 2-player mode. I would imagine it's co-op because I saw 2 score slots when you go to the credits of the game. And that could be fun to pull up with your friends and have a good time with that. So the fact that you could have a good co-op experience, the fact that, you know, it is very fluid and got a lot of great platforming action to it. It's simple, but also a lot of great replayability. I think it's a really solid game. Also, one last thing, it's the first game we've played so far on UFO 50 that has real music to it, not just sound effects. The tune's pretty good. I played the game for 4 hours straight, okay? And this is me pulling my hair out, cursing at myself for dying to really obvious things or getting really greedy trying to get my burger jumps and whatever. I never actually wanted to turn the music off. I thought it was pretty decent. So props to whoever came up with a catchy loop that feels very in the Super Mario vein of things. One Twitch commenter astutely called this game Super Ninja Bros, which I think is a very apt observation. So I'm really on the fence here. I don't know how many Barbudas to give this. Again, if you've been keeping up with our reviews, I started with the game Barbuda, which I gave 6 Barbudas. That's how many you get in it, right? And I'm going to be using that to compare other games. Bug Hunter was 8. This was either 3 or 4. I'm kind of on the fence. I don't want to give half an egg. I'm going to go with 4. Even though I know that the LX system will probably have better side-scrollers and platformers like it's been hinted at, and maybe having more bosses and diversity of music and things like that, there's really something about the way that you move that just feels incredible. The UX is so strong with Ninpek. So yeah, 4 Barbudas sounds like a great time to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the LX system developers innovate on the successes of Ninpek. For what it is, it's a really solid game. Honestly, this game is better than like almost every AAA game that I've played throughout this entire year. So again, if you enjoyed this, do feel free to give a comment. Let us know what you thought of Ninpek. Share your high score. Look forward to next week. I don't know what the next game is going to be, but again, as always, please keep spoilers of future games to yourselves. I don't want to know too much more. I'm having a lot of fun learning about the lore of the LX system, the UFO 50 recovery team, and all that stuff just through playing the game itself. So again, thanks for watching. Feel free to catch our streams. I'm on Twitch and YouTube, which you can find as well. And yeah, catch you later, Scouts.